Well, welcome back fam, I'm Dane here yet again to bring you a review / retrospective of Ultimate Spider-Man one volume at a time. Today we're looking at volume 7 of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I got to say this is an exciting volume with a whole lot of mutant and possibly even more intense high school drama. Unlike other issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, issue 39 opens up with Samuel L. Jackson waiting for something to happen, and he's just having a lovely dinner. He seems to be on a mission, but then bails and cuts to an alleyway and hits a button. And then who just happens to fall out of the sky, crashing into a dumpster, but Peter Parker, which isn't the first time that he's done this. Turns out that Peter Parker has been tailing Nick Fury for about an hour, which, as you can imagine, impresses Nick. Peter has come to Nick today to ask him to take away his powers. He's over it, he's done, and he just doesn't want to do it anymore. Sam Jackson's just like, what the fuck do you mean? So for context, this takes place almost immediately after his fight with Venom in the last issue, and Agent Carter is currently looking into all of that nonsense. Fury calms Peter down by telling him that he made the world a better and that he did the right thing, and he just needs to stop bitching. Peter is under the impression that when he turns 18, Fury is going to arrest him for being a vigilante, unsanctioned heroing timed crimes. Fury is like, well bro, so actually you're going to be like an Avenger, like with Tony Stark and Captain America? What on earth are you talking about? Fury then passes along the advice that I've been yelling at the screen for a bit now. Just because you're Spider-Man doesn't mean you have to be him every second of the day. Take a day off, please, you're 15. So Nick takes off and Peter decides to stop by Eddie's dorm, which when he gets there, he finds out that Eddie's roommate said that all of Eddie's stuff is just missing, which is a clue that Eddie might be alive and ran away and grabbed the stuff after the goo exploded into a big bunch of chunks on the streets of New York. However, we do get confirmation from Eddie's roommate that Eddie was always a piece of shit, in case, it wasn't spelled out, enough earlier in the last issue. Peter heads back to the lab for the sample again, only to run into Dr. Connors, which I'm just thrilled about. Big fan of this guy. Connors just kind of addresses the elephant in the room here. He says like, so hey, I have a PhD, and speaking as a man that is dastardly smart, I have a funny feeling that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Connor says this in the context that, well, Peter saved his family, so he isn't bringing it up to blackmail him or anything. And right now I'm kind of wondering, sorry Doc, when did this happen? We see a flashback of Peter fighting the lizard. Wait, I don't remember this at all. Am I missing something here? So I did research. Turns out in the annual line and in the Ultimate Team Up number 10, Spidey fought the lizard, which also, I've read a lot of Team Up annual stuff in the past. It's just that I didn't know if any of that was canon or not, and it ends up that at least that one was. But I'm the Ultimate Spider-Man guy, not the Ultimate Team Up guy, so we'll just gloss over it together, okay? Okay. The current situation is that Connors is casually day drinking. Well, it's night, but he tells Peter that the samples are gone, even the files on the samples are gone. It's just all gone. Everything went to shit, and nothing can be done about it. Hence, whiskey in the lab.
Poor Dr. Connor.
Lost in the sauce, Connors actually passes out after delivering a rant about how everything sucks and life is hard. And I totally understand that. This is a lesson that Peter already knows, so he just heads out. As Peter leaves, he gets a feeling that someone is following him, and for a second, he thinks that it might be Eddie. But no one ever appears, and that closes the issue. Now, on to issue 40. Peter's at a wrestling store to try and get a new costume since, if you remember, the old costume shredded into little bits when the black suit took over. It isn't going well for Peter. Peter tries to explain that the type of suit that he needs, and the clerk is like, so you're describing dancing type, not a wrestling suit. Pete's like, you got any of those then? And the guy just cocks an eyebrow and is like, no? Stupid. Peter parkours angsty across the rooftops, monologuing about. He does a lot of monologuing in this volume, honestly. For now, he reflects on when he was dating MJ and when she was able to help him with the costume stuff. But, they're exes now, so oh well, I guess. When we see him back in class, Peter is looking off into the distance, and of course, MJ notices. They start writing notes back and forth, and MJ asks, what's the matter? And Pete's not having any of it and responds like, why do you care, huh? Then in classic teacher fashion, she reads out their notes towards each other to try and embarrass them. Cringe. Later, Peter's on the phone calling up his old wrestling company to try and get info on the suit, but is also interrupted by Flash Thompson, who looks oddly concerned. He wants to talk to Peter about something, but Peter just doesn't trust it at all. He calls Flash a jackass and then walks off. Kong then comes in to say, you good? Sure looks like he ain't good. We cut to a woman being chased by a gang, and then some guy pops out a switchblade, ready to just gut her. Who could possibly intervene in such a dangerous situation? What hope does this woman have? Out of the blue, a web hits the blade. My god, it's Bootleg Spider-Man? Bootleg Spidey easily handles the randos. And anyway, he had the edge on them, since most of them were caught off guard by the Deer Tier Spider-Man cosplay. I mean, just look at this thing. The lens even popped off. We have Spider-Man at home. Later that evening, Peter is tinkering with his suit, but is interrupted by Gwen, who's talking about a party. They both talk about being loners and never being invited to these sort of things, which, yeah, they weren't invited, so now they're just party crashing. Not only loners, but rebellious loners. They decide to go in, and of course, both of them just lean against the wall and watch other people party, which is what mostly I did at these sort of things, you know, so I feel ya. Pete wants to bail, but Gwen is like, absolutely not, you are not leaving me here by myself. Then Liz Allen and a skimpy goth version of MJ walks out. Peter and Gwen are like, WTF? Before we have time to unpack all of that, something explodes outside. Everyone is chanting Geldof, which you would never guess, but that's apparently this poor guy's name. Yes, Geldof. And Geldof here, well, has decided to spend the evening blowing up people's cars. I know what you're thinking. God, if only there was a bootleg Spider-Man hero at this party to stop this menace. Well, hold on to that thought for a sec. We're at the end of the issue. Now, issue 41 continues with this guy blowing up cars. The police show up and everyone starts scrambling because they're at a teen party. So everyone is like, get her! And in the meantime, absolute bro Gwen is trying to snap Pete out of his angst. The fatherless duo start running to the backyard, and then they run into Liz and MJ, who they end up helping hopping over a fence. And at this moment, I'm having flashbacks to my younger years. Gwen offers to help Pete hop the fence. Oh, Gwenny, if you only knew. All four partygoers sit at the bus stop to start looking at each other very awkwardly. And then they talk about like what just happened and discuss how this Geldof guy started blowing up cars and stuff. They talk to two other girls that were at the party, and they talk about how they go to school with this guy. And then Liz starts making accusations and saying like, you have a mutant going to your school? Gee? Is that like her only personality trait? Mutant racism? They all talk about not wanting to get in trouble, and one thing leads to another, and Gwen brings up that her dad being killed by Spider-Man. Yeesh, what a mess tonight has been. MJ realizes that shit, my dad literally would kill me if he sees me that I snuck out dressed like this and got caught by the cops. Which Pete raises the question, why are you dressed like that? Could someone please hand her a jacket? Someone's gonna catch a cold out here. Eventually the bus comes by and they all hop on. MJ pats the seat next to signal to Peter, you know, hey, come sit with me. They talk about her current look and Peter's costume just being gone, and then she hands him a letter. MJ tells him not to open it until he gets home. As Gwen and Pete walk home, Gwen claims to know what it says. We then have Pete read it, which it's a love confession, and what does Pete do? Like any other normal teenage boy would do, sneak out and then go see the girl to discuss it. He hops up to her window because of course he can. They claim that they both love each other and forgive one another, and then they kiss and they're like, damn, just warmed my cold dead heart. I'm over here going, aw, so fucking cute, kicking my feet. And then we cut to the next day of Peter staring at graffiti-covered lockers. Geldof rules, they say. Peter is, of course, caught in deep inner monologue, but is sideswiped by a kiss from MJ. But yet again, Flash interrupts and is like, Parker, I gotta talk. But MJ kind of like crashes out on him and Flash just takes off. Honestly, I'm super curious on like what this is all about. Then Liz informs him that Geldof is back at it again, blowing up cars at a different school. MJ then tells Peter to go do something about it and then hands him a half-finished costume. And they debut the oversized costume, Spider-Man is born. Issue 42, Spidey's swinging and monologuing on the way to school where the cars are just exploding. Springing into heroic action, he jumps down and webs up Geldof's hands. Geldof's buddies over there are shocked, speechless at the sight of this bum-looking Spider-Man. No offense, MJ. My art looks about like this, the same way partway through. Geldof manages to zap the webs off of him, and then the police show up. So Spidey plans to bail, but Geldof decides he's going with him, stealing a ride as they both fumble onto a rooftop. Spidey is pissed because, come on, he just knows the headline tomorrow is going to be "Evil and Poorly Dressed Spider-Man Blows Up Cars at Local School." Geldof explains that the principal had expelled half the football team for what they did the other night because he was drunk, because that makes it okay, I guess. He goes on to say that he was going to protest the principal to unexpel the football team, and well, the bright idea he landed on was to just blow up his car. Well, that'll show him. How long do you think, you'd have to pay on a car loan on a principal's salary in 2003? Oh yeah, but anyway, he got a little too worked up and ended up blowing up another teacher's car while he was at it because she called him a name. Really, I think this guy just doesn't like cars at this point. Spidey tries to tell him that, in so many words, with great power comes great blah 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 blah. Well, Geldof isn't getting it, and Pete just face palmed, increasingly sentimental over simpler times. Like Doc Ock, that was way more of a punchable problem. Geldof is like, "So, you go to our school?" And Spidey's like, no, that would be crazy, right?
Like a liar.
They talk about their powers, and Spidey asks about how he got his powers, and Geldof doesn't know, which Spidey is like, "Oh, so you're like a mutant then?" And then Geldof really did not like that. "I'm not a devil-worshipping mutant," he says. There's Christian Xmen, aren't there? Nightcrawler is a good Catholic boy, isn't he? But before I forget, here's something to jot down. Geldof over here mentioned that he's from Latveria. Well, now I have a bad feeling about making fun of his name. Spidey then theorizes how his powers work, and then Geldof asks how Spider-Man got his powers. And incidentally, also, why does he wear a mask? Spidey then tells him he got bit by a spider and doesn't want to be famous, but you know how it is. Geldof is just like,
"Alright then, keep your secrets."
Suddenly, another store is getting robbed. Peter, who just can't help himself, goes down there to deal with it. Batman, Iron Man, and Captain America are robbing the place. As you can imagine, Peter has the situation more than under control. But Geldof over here gets a wild hair up his ass and decides to help by blowing up a car, which nearly takes out the building as well as everyone inside. Pete's had enough of this guy and finishes up the issue by running up and slapping the shit out of him. Ooh. Geldof threatens to blow him up from the inside out, but then, oh my god, it's the X-Men. Issue 43 opens out with the teacher asking the most critical question of the series. Where the hell is Peter Parker? Why? He's the only one that pays attention. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, we have a whole school counselorship from one of the first volumes that says he doesn't pay attention. But either way, it doesn't make much of a difference because an announcement comes over the PA system instructing that everyone to evacuate because of the mutant attack. We then cut back to Jean Grey, Storm, and Kitty Pryde, the cute X-Men in Kitty's own words. They've come here for Geldof because, shocker, wait, no, not that guy, surprise, he's a mutant. Pete is like, "Told you so. You devil-worshipping mutant, you." Geldof then passes out from shock. The X-Men are stunned. Spidey then explains that he was in some pretty deep denial. Kitty then starts fangirling over Spider-Man and surprises the hell out of him. And then Jean tells him that she has a poster of him in her room. Jean then starts reading his mind, and then, it freaks him the hell out. Jean then tells Spidey that he did good work, and then tells him that she is surprised that he isn't picturing her naked, which causes him to think that immediately. Look, if I tell you not to think about a pink elephant, what is the first thing you're gonna think of? That's right, a pink elephant. My boy couldn't help it, okay? Geldof quickly revives, but Jean is in his mind, and then he passes out again from shock. They offhandedly mentioned that he might not actually be a mutant though, which raises a red flag for him. And then they decide to call the professor. And then they do this brainwave FaceTime thing because Charles pops up into all of their minds and is like, "Hello, my angels." I love it. The X-Men invite Spidey to go to the mansion and actually meet the professor, and then we cut back to MJ asking people leaving the school about Spider-Man. She seems to be a tad worried about her, boyfriend. Someone even asks if she has a thing for Spider-Man. Before she can ask more questions, she's hugged tight by her mom. Just, to point out, this is the first time that we have actually ever seen MJ's mom, and she is totally worried about her. And then Aunt May shows up asking about Peter, and MJ tries to cover for him, but Gwen calls her out on it. And May is like, "MJ, where is he?" Cutting back to the X-Jet with Kitty hitting him with 20 questions. Wolverine is brought up and Pete says that he met him a few times, and I'm like, when? I guess it was one of those team-up comics I haven't read yet. Then Geldof wakes up freaking out as one does and starts doing what he does best. You know, blowing up the X-Jet. The X-Jet falling out of the sky, and everyone is doing their best in like keeping the plane together until they are all sucked out, and that is where we end the issue. Issue 44 opens up with Aunt May at home getting a call from Peter's teachers informing her that he was not in class today. So Aunt May is freaking out on like where this kid might be. Aunt May then, yells down in the basement wondering if he might be in there. The door is of course locked, but May just goes and breaks off the doorknob, which completely shocks Gwen. Then we cut to Peter sitting down reading a book about the Kingpin's downfall, which it has been a minute since we thought about him. But it turns out Pete is actually asleep and Charles Xavier is in his head telling him to wake up. Peter then wakes up maskless and with all the X-Men looming over him, especially Kitty Pryde, who is like, how old are you? And like a very, I'm super interested in you way. And then they tell him about like what happened, and then Pete is like inches away from splitting on the ground, but then Jean is able to like save him. Pete then rants that he just can't seem to keep his mask on, and everyone of course finds out that he's Peter Parker, which then they say they didn't know his name, but he is indeed right. Everyone does find out that he's Spider-Man. Jeez, he really does suck at keeping his secret identity. We cut back to Aunt May looking around the basement looking for a clue as to what on earth her nephew has gotten up to, but her search turns up with nothing. But who knows, she might just have to look like a bit harder. Then back at it with the X-Men, where Xavier is telling Peter about Cerebro and how it can track mutants and like how it works and what they're trying to figure out. And then Xavier also talks about how the placenta works, like when a woman is pregnant and then there's like that watery sac and then like the fetus grows in, and anyway he brings all this up in relation to like he believes that someone had tampered with the placenta when Geldof was in it, and in this case Geldof might not be a mutant, but he also isn't human, so he's got a theory that his DNA has been changed. Xavier wants to get some of his colleagues together to go look at him and his like DNA and perhaps take this discovery to the UN. Peter then brings up the more important point of what if he doesn't want to be a part of his agenda. Considering the devil worshipping bit and all of that, it doesn't seem like pertinent to ask. Xavier talks about how this is for like human and mutant rights, and that Peter should be frustrated with the guy who did that to him. Beast then interrupts and Spidey just sucker punches him. Well, go off then, Peter. Spider-Man then grabs our can't believe it, he's not a mutant boy, and then Cyclops bursts into the room firing an optic blast, but then catches a Spidey boot and then gets his teeth knocked out. You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, would you, Spidey? He then runs past Kitty Pryde and then just drop kicks Colossus right out of a window, who must be like, what did I do? It turns out that all this time when he was attacking the X-Men, it was all in Peter's head. Charles Xavier's like genjutsu. But Charles ends up reasoning with Peter, that he knows what he stands for. But Peter realizes like it's super late and he missed the whole day at school. We then flash forward to Peter walking into his basement with Aunt May waiting for him, saying that they need to talk. Ooh, busted. Lastly, issue 45. So, Aunt May is talking to her therapist. You know what? Good for her. I'm just happy that someone in this comic is like taking care of their mental health. But yeah, May goes over how Peter like missed school that day to do whatever, and then they fight over like what's in Peter's backpack. A book ends up flopping out and it turns out that it's Robin Hood, which Peter's mom used to read to him. Peter makes the excuse that he went to the food court to read it and then he's only skipped geometry, and that he already finished geometry book and already has an A in the class.
Like a liar.
We cut back to the therapy session and May then talks over her fear and hate for Spider-Man. She even then says her neighbor thinks that he lives in the neighborhood, and all I got to say is, damn Pete, you really suck at this. He just complained that everyone ends up finding out, and yeah dude, in fact, you're this close to everyone in the damn friendly neighborhood finding out. She goes on to talk about the sightings at Peter's school with the Goblin, her friend Captain Stacy being killed by the guy dressed as Spider-Man, and the police even hinted that Spider-Man got to her husband's killer before that they did. She also talks about Peter is just too much like his father. May then goes on to feel like there's something wrong with her because 10 years ago, her sister died and she didn't go see a therapist. Her husband died last year and she also didn't go see a therapist, but she did decide to go after a man she barely knew and had a max of like half a dozen conversations died, and then decided to need to go, and then she feels guilty. She says that she's using Gwen to take her mind off the quietness in her house. She talks about, the tape from like the last volume and how memories of her family just haunt her. Everyone she loves ends up dying, and this is very traumatic because, well, issue 155 looms in the distance. If you know, you know. She talks about how Peter has a girlfriend and he's never home at night when she checks in on him. She knows that the kids at school are mean to him, and she doesn't want to keep away this potential love that he has, especially since he's acing his classes and, after all of the losses in his life. May then admits that she's afraid if she gets closer to Peter that life will just end up killing him. And the therapist reassures May that she's doing a good thing by taking in Gwen, and she's doing things right by Peter. But the therapist also brings up that she probably had romantic feelings for Captain Stacy, and I'm like, wow, I do not remember that line at all. And then the issue ends up with May coming home asking Peter to go to the movies. They spend some time together, which is super sweet. We realize that maybe May has decided to get closer to Peter despite her worry that he'll die like everyone else, and that's where we leave off on this issue in all of volume 7. Now, on that note, let's review. First off, let's talk about the Aunt May in therapy. This is a type of thing I wanted to go over when I started doing this long Ultimate Spider-Man project the last couple of months. As a kid, I probably glanced at this and not taking much note on it, but as a creative now with my own life experience to draw from, I have a huge appreciation for how solid of a writing this is and how much insight we get into Aunt May's character. It's just downright amazing, especially since it's been going on in the background the whole time. And a lot of the time, this type of caretaker character just gets sidelined. Without getting deep into like this, it's extremely raw and it's very, very human. The whole Peter and MJ romantic story is done well here again, and I'm happy that they got back together. It seems pretty quick though, right? Personally, I think we could have had another volume of them being broken up, but that's just me. And hey, they're teenagers, so it's not that, far outside of reality. In fact, considering that, the real question is, how long will it actually last this time? Also, hell yeah, getting to see the X-Men is fantastic. Or well, uncanny. Always glad to see other Marvel characters make an appearance in this book. We also get the introduction of Kitty Pryde, who is one of my favorite characters in the Ultimate series, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. I really like the playfulness that she has going on. And yeah, I can't get enough of Timu Spider-Man running around in a half-made suit because he just can't make his own, and it's just always completely getting destroyed. He really does need MJ to help him out, so it puts even more stakes on their relationship. Honestly, this volume has scaled back from like the Venom fight, and I really enjoyed it. Peter and his supporting cast getting character development and seeing their normal lives is always interesting to like see, and I'm really honestly invested. Again, I was surprised that in this volume also didn't really need a big bad villain to create a compelling story. This time we didn't even need like a major character death either, but we did get like a great crossover with the X-Men, which really helps out. It's also great to get mutants in this story as they've been brought up several times, and hell, Spider-Man has been called that several times too, and still adds like a lot of what's going on, and I'm really excited about volume 8.